Hey, and welcome to another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jake.
And I'm Josh. Ha ha!
Oh God, he actually did it. But yeah, so yeah, our friend Mickey Mouse is here. So yeah, what's you guys been up to lately?
Daredevil, man. I think
all about that Daredevil.
Yeah. Josh and I.
Are you two the only ones that have actually watched all 13 episodes
In the world? Yes.
Yes.
But no. Yeah, I just finished up episode 13 this morning because I have nothing to do on the weekends, so I just blew through it.
Don't you work on the weekends? Details.
Who really works? I mean, most people, sure, but
yeah.
no. But I, you know me. I don't sleep much,
Right.
And
yeah.
Josh lives for television.
Yeah, you probably
Yeah.
actually watched the premiere, didn't you? You were there when it
I was
dropped.
actually. I followed the Daredevil Twitter account for the live tweet. Even though I found out about halfway through, I was about 3 minutes behind them for
same
some
here.
reason. But yeah, I watched 3 episodes the first night.
Jeez.
And then
I've only watched 4 episodes, period.
Yeah.
Me too.
But yeah, then over the course of the next 2-ish days, finished up the rest of the 10.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, for the most part, it just keeps on trucking. Like, it starts pretty strong.
Keeps that
and
level
then,
of quality.
Yeah, I can't think of a single episode that really like dips off.
Yeah.
There are definitely a couple episodes where I'm like, oh, okay, this shit's real. You know, like
Oh,
episode
yeah.
4, the one that you guys just watched,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
the infamous car door scene.
Sure, yeah.
Best
That's-
use of a corridor.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that I gotta say is like the first like, oh, okay, I'm in it, you know, kind of thing. Like, because building up to that, I wasn't crazy about Fisk. You know,
Oh yeah,
and,
well that's the first time you see Kingpin in action.
yeah, and to be totally honest, like having seen the rest of the season, you know, cover your ears if you don't want to hear some spoilers. I mean, I'm not going to get into too much detail, but I'm going to say, like, just overall, Fisk kind of, to me, a little lackluster. Like, he's not full on Kingpin, you know, he's not.
What do you think about his vocal cadence?
He's got a weird kind of almost like a stutter, like
Almost asthmatic.
yeah, and couple that with like it kind of seems like he's kind of like insecure and like kind of
I
like
could
suffers
see-
from
well,
like
yeah.
some like serious social anxieties.
Yeah, it
I could
almost,
see Kingpin being insecure.
But
I mean, I can too. I just
Well-
this isn't the Kingpin that I want to see, is what I'm saying.
Right.
Like I want to see badass
Michael Clark Duncan?
Yes. Oh my God. Rest in peace. Please come back. You know, like I want to see he, in my opinion, best Kingpin, Michael Clark Duncan, even though he was just Kingpin that one time.
But in comparison.
But yeah.
Yeah, well, the first time you see Fisk, he, almost like visually has like a nervous tick about him with his twitching of his hand, and that kind of also manifests itself in his voice. And much like Chris has said, I don't think we have Kingpin.
Yeah, that was another thing I said over dinner.
Yeah.
Like this,
It's Rise of Kingpin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They don't go heavy on Daredevil's origin in this, which I love. I like the idea of just, oh, he's Daredevil, and every once in a while sprinkle in, some
Flashbacks.
backstory. Yeah,
That's relevant to the scene at hand.
exactly. But I didn't need a whole episode where he was a kid learning how to use his cane, or something like that. I'm glad that it was just like, oh, here we go. But then it kind of ended up, because they did that, and then there's Fisk. It almost like ended up that this season was Kingpin's backstory, because it's not until the end of the season where I think we really see like a real Kingpin.
Well, it's kind of like it's a parallel, right? Because I mean, again, I'm only 4 episodes deep, but I mean, let's be honest, everyone. The image for the Netflix thing, which is interesting, because when they first posted, it was beat up Matt Murdock, and now it's straight up red suit. Daredevil.
Murdoch, yeah.
Which
Well,
is
they
like the last
showed-
show of the season.
Yeah.
Or
Well, they
last
did,
shot.
like 3 different
I'll take your word
images. They
for
showed
it.
like beat up Murdoch, Ninja Murdoch looking through a window, and then full suit.
No, I mean the
eventually.
little the thumbnail.
Yeah, no, I thought like
I never saw for the background.
For the background, that's what it was.
Yeah,
but
they'll
for the
rotate
thumbnail,
yeah.
it was like beat up Matt Murdock with the tie, like when you're like click on it.
Oh yeah, no, you're right.
But the thing about
lawyer Murdoch.
yeah, the thing about
Murdoch.
Fists that I actually like is that he's so painfully trying to fit in to this kind of high society world, and which is where I feel like that's where like that choice that he made for that not the stutter but for that voice to come in, where he's so trying to fit in, and you get that moment where the Russian guy busts in and embarrasses him in front of his possible date, and
possible future wife,
and you see basically this man who becomes back to his element, where he has a suit with built-in Kevlar in it. You know what I mean? Like that exists in real life, first of all, which is crazy, and secondly, that's to tell you like what this guy's dealing with on a daily basis.
I mean, he's basically looking forward to killing that man.
Oh, absolutely. And also like that's Fisk. The Fisk you see before that is that man putting on a mask trying to like be something else. You know, you see Fisk kind of
like he says, he was born on the streets. He grew apart from that time on the farm.
I've really, and again, I'm like Sam, I'm only on episode 4, so I've only really seen Fisk for really one episode, but I really like the choices Vincent D'Onofrio is making.
Now, to touch on what Chris was mentioning, and of course Josh, kind of slobbering all over the car door, the level of violence in this, and I think we can all agree, is something we never expected from an MCU piece of media.
Get ready, because it just keeps getting crazier.
Really?
Well,
Yeah. Well, I guess you already saw the guy with the
Impale
fence.
yes.
That's like the first instance where you're like, oh, okay, they're not pulling any punches.
Well, yeah.
And then the car door, you're like, holy shit.
Well, the interesting thing about the car door is they leave a lot to the imagination. I mean, yes, you see is like
and you hear
brains.
the juices.
Yeah.
That's probably the worst part. Like you could show me a watermelon exploding, like you see in Predator, but like to hear it just like, that's like.
The listeners at home
You're welcome.
Yeah, sorry.
Hope you're listening with headphones.
Yeah,
so you can't escape.
Hope you're not eating.
or if you are, enjoy your meal.
Yeah,
I mean, I built up to it. I said the sounds.
But it was really that third episode, and Jake kind of warned me because he had seen it before. He's like, "Shit gets crazy.
Shit gets real, man."
And I was just like, yeah, all right, fine. I'm watching the third episode because if you remember, it's very quick and it's in the dark, like everything in this fucking show. He straight up breaks a dude's leg in the first episode in the dock fight. You see like the bone stick out of the pants, and I was like, "Oh,
that's
okay."
not the last time you see something like that.
No, I mean a dude's arm gets broken in the
bowling alley. I just want to throw some balls.
Yeah. And poor guy,
Yeah.
Even though he's like a paid up crime guy, but still, like he gets like wrecked.
I saw some people, what's the word? Theorizing that that guy in the bowling alley, maybe that's gonna be Bullseye.
But he's dead.
Yeah. He's
They're
dead.
all,
It's a bad theory. I'm just saying.
almost as bad as the theory that the Punisher shows up in Winter Soldier.
Oh God. Yeah.
Or that James Bond is just a code name.
Yeah. But I mean, now seeing this level of like that Marvel, because when Marvel got picked up by Disney about 3 years ago, I was like, well, that means they're all going to be family friendly from here on out, which is fine.
And Disney princesses.
But Disney did make the mention of saying, when they acquired Marvel, that they were just really going to be throwing money at them and just staying hands off.
Yeah, but still, like the changing of ownership.
Oh yeah,
regardless, is going to affect.
Yeah, the first thing you're not going to think of is a blood-splattered Mickey Mouse with Daredevil standing over him, like, "I'll protect this city."
Although I will remind everyone that Disney did have the Insane Clown Posse on their record label for about 10 minutes.
Oh, I mean that's all. That's just terrible.
Then they met them and they were like,
well, no, like
a massive mistake on their part.
Well, so they were on Geffen, which is owned by Disney, and Disney didn't realize who they were until the album was on stands, for the release day, and then within an hour, it was pulled.
Jeez.
Oops.
But in terms of what record execs didn't listen to those fucking dailies or what the fucking
the people that just sign paychecks all day.
But I mean, I'm not saying family friendly for everything
right.
is bad. But I was like, well, we'll never
never see a Punisher movie.
Yeah, well, we'll never see like an R-rated Marvel film. We still might not, but we'll never get that level. And then I'm watching like Daredevil, and I'm like, oh my God, now I want to see a Netflix Punisher. Now I want to see a Netflix Blade or whatever. Moon Knight, sure, yeah. Werewolf by Night.
Werewolf by Night.
Son of Satan. If you're really feeling ballsy, go for it.
Well, and I think also for the fact that this was done through Netflix is what gave them that greater freedom.
Yeah. Do you think that Daredevil is going to hurt Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Because it's like, look how fucking awesome this show
Well,
is.
it's
Look how
weird because
not-
I don't think it's not going to take any money away from people. People are still going to see it. It's still going to make squillions of dollars.
Still
Yeah,
talking
like-
about it. There's talking
Yeah.
about a spinoff.
Yeah.
To be fair, as I've alluded to before, I think that nothing's going to hurt Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. more than itself.
Yeah, well,
Because like I stopped watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. months ago because I got tired of it. You know.
and I've seen I once made the mistake of going through all of the end credits of an episode of Daredevil, and it still has the ABC logo for their, the ABC television brand. So obviously, it's all the same money still going in through them.
They film it through ABC Studios.
Right. So I don't think this will directly hurt Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like Chris said, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is kind of doing that to itself.
Yeah, I'm well aware that they're made by the same fucking
Well, no,
people.
my bad. I was totally thinking of because Sam and I had a discussion of Mike about Age of Ultron, and not hurting Age of Ultron, but the idea of that people are like, I just watched 13 episodes of like the most gritty, realistic, badass shit, and like not that Age of Ultron isn't going to be, hopefully be a fun, great movie,
Yeah.
but people are going to look at it a little differently, possibly because of what Daredevil did. With Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I think absolutely because
There's more of a comparison
people
there.
are waiting for from what I've seen, like working at a comic shop, listening to people, waiting for a reason to shit on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like that show gets shit on like crazy, man. Like there are the people who love it, like who come into the shop, but more so it's like I'm just keeping up because when the movie comes out, they'll have a tie-in, and then it'll be good again. And
Yeah, like the Winter Soldier tie-in.
yeah,
Was where
Still the best episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
Well, like where Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., unfortunately, Marvel's been using to, on a television front, tie into their film properties primarily. When Daredevil premiered, they have the mention of the incident in New York. They don't ever hugely, and they drop
Yeah, I'm
mentions
glad-
of like a suit of armor, a magical hammer, but they don't.
And wings on your head.
Yeah,
you know.
but they don't try to shoehorn in the MCU with the Daredevil show.
Yeah.
Where Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it's like our entire lifeline is the MCU. If that, for some ungodly reason, ever ends, well, we're all out of a job here.
Yeah. That's a good point.
And I
mean,
was really glad. Like I was like, okay, cool. They had to make sure that everyone's aware that it exists in the same universe. But it was almost like no one even paid attention to the line.
well-
Like it was so in passing. Like the idea that like New York is kind of in shambles is like a reoccurring thing. But at the same time, it's New York. That could be any time period.
Yeah.
Like there's always been problem neighborhoods, and
Well,
Hell's Kitchen especially.
if you never watched the Avengers, and for one, shame on you, but if you never watched the Avengers, you'd have no idea what they're talking about.
And they also make jokes of where they get the property for the law firm and Murdoch's apartment at points at a cheaper rate because of all the shit that went down because of that battle.
The
and
idea,
the giant light up sign right outside his window.
yeah,
Yeah,
the,
that too helps.
the idea is that like one, Daredevil's got to stand on his own like a solo Marvel film. But on the other hand, like Daredevil exists to take care of the people that are too small time
Yeah.
on the
for-
street.
Yeah, for guys like Cap or Iron Man or Hawkeye,
And
whatever
also-
the fuck Hawkeye does, like when he's not in an Avengers movie.
yeah.
Shooting arrows at a wall.
Cries
But-
that he doesn't have his own solo film.
Also,
Or
like
Hawkeye.
Daredevil doesn't have, and also the shared universe. They don't need to keep reminding us that they're a shared universe. Like, I hope that's something that's not every movie they have to make a nod to. Like, it's like if every single comic book that ever existed had to remind you that it was in the Marvel universe. It doesn't need to do
Yeah,
that.
like
Well, that's
every
what
single
S.H.I.E.L.D. does.
Well,
Yeah.
every single. That's probably what hamstrings Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh,
most.
yeah.
Because it's so beholden to
Yeah.
the films. Whereas, like, it'd be like reading a Batman comic where it's always like, hey, man, Green Lantern was seen over in Coast
Just drove
City.
in from Metropolis.
Yeah.
Woo, what a drive.
There's that fellow that flies. I know he's been doing it for like
Yeah.
5 years.
Man, I wish I could run here like that one speedster that we heard about in the newspaper from
Yeah.
the Daily Planet. Like,
Did you
don't
hear
need
that
to.
there's a Martian in a satellite orbiting the Earth that's owned by this Justice League?
1930s Gotham City.
He made him sound like Commissioner Gordon
Yeah,
from the
yeah.
Adam West show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
stop.
We'd be nowhere without that Batman.
Yeah.
There's an episode of Batman 66 where Batman and like Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson are basically on vacation, and so they don't pick up the bat phone when the commissioner calls
Oh,
them.
they're so fucked.
And like the commissioner turns to Chief O'Hara, and they're both like, I feared this day would
Yeah.
come, the day where we have to solve a crime on our own. And it's like, you're police.
Yeah, they're just like, we have to work. But you get like the stop. Did you hear about the man flying over the city? Stop. Oh, stop. he flew in, faster than a speeding bullet. Stop. But like,
able to leave tall buildings with a single bound.
Stop. But like, yeah. So I hope they get over and again, I think Daredevil's like, hey, here it is, like funny little. Here's their moments with that, and it was I very clever about the hammer stuff and the armor stuff, but
very clever about those Iron Fist.
Yeah,
Easter
the Iron
eggs
Fist
too.
Easter eggs, and that's another thing too. Like if this is what the fight scene looks like.
I'm just a big Iron Fist.
That's
fan.
fine. I don't know anything about Iron Fist, so any references to him flew over my head. The only Iron Fist that I know is the Spider-Man,
Web
Ultimate
Spider-Man.
Yeah. But I mean, like, if this is what the fighting looks like in Daredevil, what the fuck is it gonna look like in Iron Fist?
Yeah, the martial artist. Oh,
like
God.
he's like the greatest in all of the land, man.
He's one of the best hand-to-hand fighters in the entire.
Unless
Marvel
Doc
universe.
Savage showed up in the Marvel universe, but like,
that's a given.
It is a given.
Yeah.
But we don't have to worry about that
best,
because he's not gonna. Doc Savage wouldn't do that. He's a nice guy. He's also a very nice guy.
Yeah.
But
he's the nicest.
He's the nicest guy in the world,
and he's the most humble about it too.
He is. Yeah. You would never know because he's Doc Savage.
Yeah.
But yes,
The Savage
I mean,
Hawks.
I can't wait to see Iron Fist, man.
Here's the thing. Everyone was like, oh, it's kind of like Arrow. And it's like, yeah, I guess in the sense that it's street level and it mostly takes place at night. But this is its own fucking thing.
Oh, yeah. Arrow's bigger on a scale with, like, bigger stunts, in terms of, like, trucks and car chases and explosions, which is cool because Arrow still has a great, fantastic stunt team.
They have that CW budget.
Yeah. That's CW money, but
that network money.
But Daredevil's got it's focusing all on this like insane fight sequences.
The hallway fight.
The hallway fight scene in episode 2.
The hallway
take?
fight.
Oh,
the
man.
hallway fight.
Yeah.
Can we just talk about? Can I just like kind of geek out on my own about the
Oh
hallway
no, I'm
fight?
gonna join you on
I was
that.
going to say maybe not on your own, but yes.
No, keep the mics
He's
on.
slowly
guys.
turning
Come
our
on.
mics off. Like,
I
"You
think-
motherfucker."
But yeah, fucking. It was like that hallway fight in Old Boy.
That was the first thing Sam said when that shot panned down. You were like, "Old boy."
Yeah.
Though it turned out to look more like the raid.
Yeah, I read somewhere on the Twitter that I don't know if it was you or I think it was what's his name, that artist that we all
Richard
follow?
C. Meyer.
Richard C.
Yeah,
Meyer,
was talking about how it was like the raid.
Drew me a sketch of
Doc
Doc
Savage.
Savage.
Oh.
Yeah, during that fight, I have to say I burst out laughing when I saw the microwave come flying out of the open
just
door,
annihilating
hit the
that
Yeah.
one dude. Like, hey, is everything all right? And
Yeah.
hot buckets. Yeah.
But yeah, that scene was great.
Yeah, I mean, it was the it really because the fight in Old Boy is a tracking shot.
Yeah, it's left to right.
Yeah. Whereas the Raid, if you've never seen that film, it's a Indonesian martial arts film, one of the greatest action films ever made. But it has those kind of like brutal, like confined fight sequences, all in like a long take, just like this, and it was just so cool. I mean, and though there is that one moment near the end where you can tell where they switch out Charlie Cox for a stunt fighter. Yeah, that's the entire reason why he knocks the other guy into the other room, like, and goes after him. Because when he jumps back out, it's Charlie Cox, and then he knocks him out back, and then Charlie Cox goes and rescues the kid. But
yeah, it's just
yeah.
such also, like, I'm such a fan of the Black Man Without Fear suit. Like, I'm almost just like, keep him in that forever, man. Keep him in that forever.
I had never read a comic where he was in like Ninja Daredevil mode, but I did know that it was a canonical suit.
Yeah, only one story.
Yeah, but like is from shot one of him in it, like the promotional shots, I was like, I'm team. I don't need the red suit.
Black suit Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, black suit Spider-Man's my favorite Spider-Man.
Black suit Superman.
Black suit Superman.
Yeah,
Stealth suit Iron Man.
sure. I don't know it.
But that moment at the end of episode 1 where he's like honing in to hearing the kid crying, and he hears him cry and just puts the mask down over his face, and it cuts to black, and it's just I don't know, man. And I am I'd probably say my favorite Daredevil story is Man Without Fear, but
over Born Again.
Yeah, but seeing the outfit, it works so well.
And I will say, in touching on Man Without Fear, it really is more Frank Miller than Brian Bendis or Ed Brubaker.
Yeah,
like in terms of like inspiration.
Yeah,
that kind of tone, that level of brutality, that level of like, man, this neighborhood really fucking sucks.
Yeah, Catholicism.
Yeah, it was really.
Frank Miller was all about the Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
Well, his
he gave him. I mean, he's the one who made Matt Murdock a Catholic.
Yeah, his rationale was only a Catholic would fight crime in the courtrooms by day, and then break the law and fight crime as a vigilante by night.
Yeah,
that was his thought process.
Yeah, and with the use of the Catholicism throughout the show, they weave it in brilliantly.
It isn't as heavy-handed as it is in the Affleck film.
Right.
Yeah,
but
yeah. There were times where I like went several episodes with like basically forgetting that he was Catholic, and then he would just pop in, talk to that priest again. I'm like, oh right, yeah, Daredevil's Catholic.
Some of the interactions he has with that priest are some of the best, as sort of like this, personal conflict you have with this religion of yours, and dealing with it in this way is just really well done in the show.
Everyone's kind of like putting percentages of like, which writer, this or that. Like we were saying, obviously, most of it we would probably say goes to Frank Miller and Brian Michael Bendis. I feel like the stuff with the priest is Kevin Smith, Guardian Devil stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well, honestly, the Daredevil film takes quite a bit from Guardian Devil if you think about it. The fight with Bullseye in the cathedral, and the opening of him like holding the cross, and
everything. It also has Kevin Smith in it, so it doesn't surprise me
in
at
a
all.
very short role, just holding the billy club, and being like, "Hey man, how cool is this?
Yeah,
how cool is this?" And Ben Urich is just like, "Get the fuck out of here!" Like, you man,
you man,
oh, wow.
with fear.
Yeah.
So he actually is in the characters in the film as well.
Yeah, played by Joe Pantilio from The Matrix, the guy that played Cypher.
That's who he plays in that film. Okay, his representation in the show, I think, is a lot better than
everything is a lot.
Pretty much
better.
everything. Yeah.
He doesn't sleep in a water coffin anymore.
Isn't one of my man when he wakes up.
One of my favorite things about the show versus the movie is that they don't go nuts with the Daredevil vision.
Yeah.
They almost never show it. Like I think like you see like one clear shot of like, oh, this is how he sees the world, and then like that's it. And then like they kind of like tease it here and there, but like for the most part it's just like like you're kind of, when he's focusing and like listening to things, you got these beautiful sweeping shots of the surrounding area, and then like it kind of slowly pushes in on his face.
Well, I feel
as he focuses on whatever.
I feel like we get only once of like how his brain has counteracted to his lack of eyesight, and we get like the true Daredevil vision. And then, as you mentioned, Chris, with the focusing in, the rest of the time is the for the audience's
just pretty
benefit.
Cinematography.
Yeah, that's
so. It doesn't interrupt the flow that way.
Exactly.
Whereas, like, again, kind of ragging on the Affleck film, and let me stress, I don't think the 2003 Daredevil film is necessarily Ben Affleck's fault.
No.
Oh, God, no.
It's just a problem, really, I guess, of direction and to a lesser extent writing.
Or lack of direction.
Yeah. But they show...
And the material they were given with that film.
They show that, again, writing a bit, but they show Daredevil vision, like, almost all the fucking time.
Yeah.
So much so that the DVD menu is entirely in Daredevil vision. Like, look how cool this is, right? And then you're just like,
you see it. You see it enough times that you wish you were blind when watching the film.
And deaf too.
You just Tommy watching this movie.
I just want all my senses gone. Senses fail.
I don't even want to taste this film.
Yeah.
Especially not tasted.
Hell, heaven forbid. But Jake, you were saying earlier that everybody kind of has their own little thing that draws them to
and I mean, I'm sure that's, people are like, it's every superhero, and it probably is, but I feel like with Daredevil especially, there seems to be this,
it's more pronounced.
I always like to ask people, like, hey, what is it about Daredevil that fascinates you, that makes you a Daredevil fan? Because Daredevil fans are pretty, they're hardcore, like they are, they love the character.
They have D's tattooed on their chest.
And
I imagine.
Yeah. And for me, it's kind of a smorgasbord of stuff.
Swedish Chef is my favorite.
Do the rest of this podcast as your favorite Muppet.
Yeah.
Be like, okay, it's King Brown, okay.
My favorite Daredevil comic is probably
but no, I do. Sorry, I'm just so off topic. No, okay. So I love the idea of him being a lawyer by day and a vigilante by night. That fascinates me. Like this clear, like, contradiction.
The fact that he can't stop pursuing crime.
That he can't stop, and I mean
justice.
And there is a part of me too that, like, the idea. Frank Miller always says how many superheroes are known for what they can't do, which is what drew him to Daredevil. His limitations are what he's known by, being this blind superhero, and so with the Daredevil vision, it was always kind of like, I like the idea of this guy being in complete darkness all the time and hearing things like and reacting to that, not necessarily seeing like it's the freaking Matrix where like when it rains he can see people. I like the idea of it being this, this man, like this idea of being in constant darkness and still striving to fight through this, and the idea of the boxer mentality of always getting back up. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, what are you guys kind of drawn to by Daredevil? I don't know, maybe you guys are just fans of the show. I know Sam's a big Daredevil reader. But what is it necessarily about Daredevil? Is it the Catholicism? Is it the limitation that he can't see? Is it the boxer spirit? What is it about Daredevil? Josh, I'll start with you.
It's probably definitely in the sense of his abilities, the lack of sight and how his brain, and they kind of allude to in the show, not to the same silly extent as they did in the film of what that blindness and those chemicals did to him, but just how his lack of sight in his body overcompensates with his other senses of what he's able to do with it, gives him a much greater ability than any average person would have, and how he uses it, not just in his lawyering abilities in the show, but also his crime fighting.
Yeah, one of the things I think that drew me into him was, I've always been a big Batman fan, and he's kind of like a street thug level version of Batman. He's basically got the same motivations and whatnot, but like he doesn't have the bankroll to support him, and he's doing it while he's blind. And it's always fun to see, like, I was raised Roman Catholic, and it's fun to see, like a positive a character in comics with that, because from my perspective, like the Catholicism is always kind of like a butt of a joke, at least in regards to like, Catholic guilt or something like that. So it's nice to just see like, he is a Catholic, yeah, and it kind of being one of his motivations to do like the right thing, the strive to help save everyone.
You could argue it's what keeps him grounded.
Yeah, that too.
The entire reason he goes into confession and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Puts everything in perspective.
Yeah. Oddly enough, Born Again is like the only actual like comic series of his that I've read, which was very heavy on the Catholicism, because that was one of Frank Miller's big things.
Oh, it's his
as we've mentioned.
It's his second to last time writing Daredevil, and it's his last time like writing the core series. Interesting thing about Born Again, one, it's my favorite of the Frank Miller stuff that he's written for the character. So if you've never read Born Again and you plan to maybe plug your ears for like 2-3 minutes. So it's all about, Kingpin finds out that Matt Murdock is Daredevil and comes after him like
with a vengeance.
But he does it in illicit means before, taking him head on. Until the Kingpin tries to personally kill Daredevil, Matt Murdock has almost accepted that his life is just shit.
Yeah.
Like he's almost willing to give up, right?
Like I said, I feel like...
And then he finds out, then the Kingpin tries to kill him, and he's like, oh.
You shouldn't have signed it.
Yeah, and then he realizes that, because he was I guess he was just like, well, I guess just my life just sucks.
I mean, I feel like the one straight up reason he didn't quit was because he had that quote-unquote blanket of being Daredevil. But once you get like the visual foundation of his home exploding and the suit torn up, and Miller was so keen on getting rid of the outfit with that. Two of his most famous books, Man Without Fear and Born Again, barely in the suit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, certainly not in the red one.
Certainly not in Man Without Fear. I mean, spoilers, it's not to the last page you see him in the red suit. And
because it's an origin story.
Yeah, and it's just such a great last panel with that, where he's like, what is the line? It's like something like, "God, I hope it looks good," or I don't look silly. God only knows what it looks like.
Yeah.
I think that's the line, and that's such a perfect line while he's like jumping over Hell's Kitchen and stuff. And you get the great shot of like the evolution of the suit as he's doing like front flips and cartwheels all over the place.
Never see the yellow suit, will we?
No, and I like the yellow suit, man. I do.
It's all right. I liked it.
Daredevil Yellow is probably the best example. You get to see like it really kind of like awesome.
And the writer of Daredevil Yellow, Jeff Loeb, is an executive producer on Daredevil the show.
I have to say, just as a quick thing, that the fact that he has had a yellow suit and he's the man without fear, and that in the DC universe, yellow is representation of fear. That's kind of just if an unintentional little
it
nice
has to be
nod.
Very unintentional.
Very
'cause,
unintentional.
Yeah, Yellow didn't really represent fear until Sinestro Corps.
Or Green Lantern Rebirth,
Yeah.
which was like 2004.
Yeah,
So,
But just that there's that, at least in both universes.
and
that-
clearly you have to have no fear to wear yellow like that.
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's gives
Now we're a fashion
no
podcast.
no shits about how he looks. He's just like fuck it.
Yeah,
And then I think it's Karen Page that tells him to go red.
it's Karen Page. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great story too.
How cool is
Daredevil.
Deborah Ann Wool as Karen
Oh,
Page?
she's so good.
Yeah,
Love
speaking of the other characters in this
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
Before-
There's other actors other than
Well, I
Charlie
don't-
Cox.
Well, we haven't.
Or
I don't think.
Vincent D'Onofrio.
I don't think we've even truly give Charlie Cox the due that
Yeah.
he is needed. I mean, that talk about bold and interesting choices that he's making as an actor. One, playing a blind man is tough enough. The idea of not focusing on anybody, because you wouldn't be able to focus on somebody. So that idea of like if you're acting in this really, there's some great scenes with Rosario Dawson. Some really powerful emotional scenes where she's like, playing and reading off of Charlie Cox's face, and he can't do that. You know what I mean? He can because he can see it; it's there, but he can't play off that
For the
because he can't
character.
for the character. And he's so good at that, and he's so good at also playing really angry. Like when Rosario Dawson is put in danger, he's like panting, he's out of breath, he's letting himself get angry, and he's not this big hulking guy either. Daredevil's not this like jacked bodybuilder man.
Very fit for his size.
He is, and I think he's really blown me away with what I've seen. Again, only in 4 episodes, and as soon as he puts that mask down and becomes Daredevil, and quote unquote lets the devil out, as every the marketing's been like crazy about that. He becomes this other beast, and it's fantastic.
Those Murdoch boys, they got the devil in them.
Yeah, don't mess with those Murdoch boys.
Yeah, I mean,
And
yet
when
he's
he-
Catholic.
Yeah,
and just like a true Catholic, he has the devil in him. But like every time he puts down the mask, and like lets the devil out, I gotta say I'm very happy that they didn't fall into the growly voice.
he's got a great voice.
He's got like there is a difference to his voice when he's Matt Murdock versus Daredevil, but it's not it's not Batman.
It's like
it's not Arrow.
It's weird. It's like this is gonna sound really. It's like there's like a smokiness or like a
Like a wine.
Yeah. It's very it's rosy and yeah, but
Hint of
Oak.
vanilla.
yeah. Is that oak and
Maybe a little bit of cinnamon?
yeah.
What
His
wines
voice
do you
is very
drink?
voice is very cinnamon. No, but it's very powerful and booming too when he's talking to that guy. And
Yeah.
he's just like
Mhm.
in the garage when he saves Night Nurse. But yeah, I mean the cast is really great too. But yeah, going back to Karen Page, got a hell of an entrance, and she is her own force on that show. What she's doing with Ben. Trying to do the right thing. She's got that
Ben
thing.
Affleck?
Yeah. She's got that thing inside of her too, where she wants to do the right thing. She can't shake it.
Mhm.
And then Foggy's great too. I think Foggy's bringing some of that comedic stuff to it really well.
The
Doomsday.
Yeah,
from,
the first thing I think of whenever I see him.
It's funny. I recognized him. And I was like, man, where do I know this guy from? And luckily, Sam, when we were watching the first episode, he was just like, yeah, Doomsday from the Max Landis Death and Return or Sleep
Yeah.
and Return of Superman. I was like, yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
I love seeing that guy pop up. He was on an episode of Psych.
As the bad guy.
Yeah, spoilers.
Yeah, that was a Friday the 13th episode.
Yeah,
too.
it was Thursday the 12th or something like that.
I forget what it's called.
It was a play on Friday the 13th, but also like it was the day that the episode aired,
Yeah.
which was not Friday the 13th.
Yeah, it was one of the highlights of the series. Really.
That and the Hitchcock episode.
Yeah. With Mr. Yang,
Yeah.
but the played by Peter Weller. The
Yes.
Oh yeah.
the I think the thing that draws me the most to Daredevil is the fact that he can take, like, to put it simply, he can take a punch.
He can take several punches.
He can take a lot. I mean, he's beat the fuck up in every single
Well,
episode.
And you feel it too, like
Yeah.
as the audience, like you're like, how are you not dead? 'Cause
second-
I feel like I'm
Yeah,
dead.
second episode he's almost bleeding out.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and it really doesn't heal that much throughout the series. Like he kind of like kind of like Mad Max. You know,
See that damage?
you see it throughout the whole series.
The badass thing about Daredevil is he'll take 1 or 2 hits in the face to get closer to you,
Yeah,
as opposed to trying to stay back and wait for the strike. He'll take those extra, couple extra hits
he'll take that punishment to get that
to
shot.
get to you to get the killing blow.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of that. He's a character that really derives that kind of strength and from pain, from getting beat the fuck up. You know,
Mhm.
I think he's a kind of guy that like outlasts his opponent, not so much
The
as,
rope-a-dope.
Yeah, you know, as Josh was kind of touching on earlier, his greatest power, or at least his superhuman ability, is linked to his disability.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he turned that around, and it made him one of the strongest heroes in the Marvel universe. And pound for pound, some of those Daredevil might have more quality stories than say Thor or
Well, I mean, look, yeah, I mean,
maybe Iron Man.
probably. I mean, you know,
I mean, and I love both those characters too, and they definitely have good stories.
yeah.
But what Frank Miller, Brian Bendis, Ed Brubaker, Mark Waid, and to a lesser extent Ann Nesenti have done with that character has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like it completely. I mean, then there was no character on the stands that was that gritty. You know, it's certainly not from the big two when Frank Miller took over Daredevil in the late '70s and gave him that's the precursor. There can be no Dark Knight Returns without Frank
Yeah.
Miller's Daredevil.
I love he said that everyone looked at him like he brought whiskey to the playground with Daredevil.
Yeah.
Because, you know, he was like, too many people spend time writing for kids who weren't there. And Daredevil's audience is not a child audience, you know. Daredevil is a hard-boiled, street-level, brutal, beat-em-up kind of guy.
He can't be this like
You're not going to see him in cosmic events, you
Yeah.
know. He's
Hell's Kitchen in the '70s isn't Peter Parker's Midtown.
no,
You know,
no.
it's like this really.
Yeah, Peter Parker swings in, hey, what's up, Daredevil? Get the fuck out of here.
and that was the big problem with
the
like
wallflower.
yeah, the big problem with early Daredevil, like Stan Lee and like early '70s Daredevil, is he's kind of a Spidey clone.
Oh, he's totally.
He's just the difference is he's like blind, right? And he's got his own like cast of characters. Though even his biggest villain, Kingpin, started out as a Spider-Man villain.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone kind of forgets that he became more of a Daredevil villain as time went on.
Well,
But
Frank Miller was like, "Give me Kingpin.
Yeah,
like,
it's like-
I can use him. Nobody else is using him. Let
Nobody
me
can-
use him."
Yeah, just like when Frank Miller took Daredevil was at risk of cancellation.
Yeah.
And when Frank Miller started on Daredevil, he was just the artist.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, this book's failing. And he's like, well, tell you what, if you guys are thinking about canceling it, let me write it too. And if it still doesn't work, it still doesn't work.
Yeah.
But I think I can. And, you know, he changed the game.
Yeah. I mean, he's the guy, you know, granted he didn't create Daredevil, but he did create Elektra. You know, first issue he wrote,
Yeah.
you know, he brings Elektra in and changes the game with that. And like I said, you know, Frank Miller is kind of awesome. I mean, I know a lot of stuff about, you know, like nowadays he's kind of like falling off. People don't like some of the later stuff, and that's fine. But you look back at like...
You actually read Holy Terror.
I did read Holy Terror. I love the art in that book. I will say that. He's so great with like negative, like black and white spaces and stuff, or coloring and shading and you know, lighting. That book's pretty wild though. But yeah, I mean, you think back of like early Frank Miller's career, like what he was doing and how he went from a nobody to drawing Daredevil, to doing writing and drawing Daredevil, to to the point where people think he created Daredevil. You know, when you get to
Yeah.
that status,
Certainly created how he's represented now.
absolutely. And same thing, like, you know, people don't mistake him for creating Batman, but like, look at, you know, you trace it back to Batman, like, you know, and again, we talked about this in the past. He didn't create the idea of Batman being gritty, but he brought it back to that element and made it something really special, and did it. I mean, in my opinion, 4 times. I mean, you know, we talked about, you know, the unofficial saga he did, but especially with Batman Year One and Dark Knight Returns.
He did, 3 times with Daredevil? His
Yeah.
initial run, Born
Yeah.
Again, and Man Without Fear.
Yeah, and yeah, Born Again. I mean, when he touches Daredevil, I mean, it's something special.
It's been like 20 years.
I would love to see what he would do with Daredevil now. Like if you gave him one more shot, like not one more shot, but like you just like, oh, what does old Frank got? But like if you're like, hey, do you have one more Daredevil story in you, and what would it be? You know,
what if they had him help out writing for the show?
That'd be interesting.
Or have him as like a creative consultant.
Yeah. I was wondering about that, you know, because
season 2 Born Again.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Born Again's you know,
Born Again's,
if you ever look at like
that's the roughest it's ever been for Matt Murdock.
If you ever, I mean, they just piece by piece, man. The first issue alone, like you know, it's not just a one issue story. The first issue alone, money's gone, job is gone, house is gone. Everything is gone, and he's just crawled up in this like in the second issue, that first page. You get that overhead shot. He's just crawling. He's on a bed, and he's just talking about how the cold is like giving him a cramp in his back because he's just in this like, you know, little tiny like almost like it looks like a shower, you know.
Yeah.
And he's just defeated, and you know builds him back up.
Yeah, Kingpin goes one step too far. The I will say pound for pound, the best Daredevil writer is probably Brian Bendis.
I feel like nowadays, that's definitely the case. I am very, very undereducated on the Brian Michael Bendis stuff. My Daredevil stuff. I mean, my Daredevil is pretty much solely Frank Miller that I've read.
Plus Yellow.
Plus Yellow, which is a fantastic read.
Only 4 issues.
Yeah, but it's really well done. It's in that vein of, you know, the Spider-Man Blue, Spider-Man Gray. You know, the team that brought us Long Halloween. And Superman for All Seasons, but yeah, Bendis. Everyone, I mean, that's almost the first question people ask nowadays when they're talking about Daredevil. It's like, where do you go? And it's like, Bendis, man. You read Bendis.
So yeah, that Ultimate Collection, Volume 1.
Yeah.
What's the zeitgeist been like in the store?
It's really cool because, I deal with like reordering books and stocking stuff, and so I knew a week or two beforehand to go crazy with Daredevil books, and the ones that we knew would sell, of course, Man Without Fear. One, because that's a story you never had to read Daredevil before, and you could pick up and read. Also, clearly, so much of this first season is taken from the Man Without Fear, down to the suit, down to the origin story, down to the brutal nature of it, and in my opinion, some of the best John Romita Jr. art you'll get. And then, of course, the Born Again, the Frank Miller stuff, and then basically the entire run of Bendis. We have Brubaker as well and Yellow, but the entire run of Bendis, because that's something that...
What about Frank Miller Visionaries Daredevil Volume 1?
We have Volume 1 and 2 there. Those are a little tougher sell because so much of Volume 1 is getting into him writing him. You know, he's drawing him very early on. And I love the early Daredevil Frank Miller art stuff, and you see his evolution over time. But the big sellers are Born Again and Man Without Fear, the Frank Miller stuff. Because a lot of people just they don't know the story. They just know Frank Miller and Daredevil.
Were you saying like the Volume 3 of the Bendis Ultimate Collection was sold out at the distributor level?
Well, that I can't remember if that one was like out of print or back ordered, but there's some, it's either that or the Brubaker stuff that was like we couldn't get a hold of. But the Bendis stuff still sells really strong. Like I said, I'm very undereducated on the Bendis stuff and working my way to reading more of that and really getting back into reading a lot of Daredevil stuff.
Let's just say if Born Again's about Matt Murdock's worst enemy finding out that he's Daredevil, there's broader implications that get explored during the Bendis run, during the entirety of the Bendis run.
And another really awesome thing working at a comic shop is, you know, with Flash, with Arrow, with Gotham, with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., everyone comes in, they go, hey, did you see Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. last night?
What about Constantine?
Well, when Constantine was on, yeah, people. To be fair, people would say that. They'd be like,
to be fair, no one really watched Constantine.
And they'd say,
that's a shame because that show was great.
beat Gotham and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in terms of quality.
And people would talk about it and say, hey, did you see, you know, Arrow's episode of Arrow last night? Did you see the episode of Flash last night? When Daredevil premiered, people would walk in the shop and they wouldn't say, did you see Daredevil last night? They would go, what episode are you on? And everyone knew what show you were talking about. They don't have to say, did you watch Daredevil last night? And it's unlike any movie that since I worked at the shop, people talking about. I mean, it's just Daredevil crazy.
Well, that's what happens when you just release all at once something that's just that damn well done.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I think it's not just going to change comic television. It's going to change television. the way that Netflix is seen as well.
It certainly put any concerns or anxiety I had about the rest of the Marvel Netflix slate to rest.
Yeah.
So I'm
yeah,
looking
definitely.
Well, I love Kristen Ritter. Like I don't know much about the Jessica Jones stuff, but
Read Alias, not the Jennifer Garner
Yeah.
series, but read the Bendis book Alias and The Pulse. Those are
if I
very
were to
Jessica Jones
guess, and this is again just purely hypothetical guess, if I were to say it's going to be more of like a actual mystery crime, well, not like crime
I'm
fighting
hoping for
solving,
Veronica
but
Mars.
like yeah,
Well, the premise was
Watch Eye
Veronica
Zombie.
Mars,
yeah,
like,
the premise for Alias
good one, too.
and The Pulse was she's a private investigator
right.
for super heroic related crime,
Mhm.
So
and you get David Tennant.
it kind of like Powers, only without the like cop procedural half, but more PI version of it.
Yeah, though, like the lead in Powers, she used to be a superhero.
Right.
Yeah.
But just not like an actual police force.
And
the PI
hates
version of
prawns.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Despises
Fucking
those
prawns, man.
fucking prawns.
Focamole.
I
Yeah.
like that picture you posted with him
The Charles
showing
Oakley
it.
Instagram where
Yeah.
someone had like eat as many prawns as you can or whatever, and he goes, I don't know, man. And the picture he just had this like classic smile on his face or whatever.
Shit-eating grin.
Yeah.
Now, you were saying before we started recording, you're speaking of Born Again.
Yeah.
Your father has become a Born Again.
That's two Daredevil things, father and born again, are
Yeah.
the same thing. Well done.
Comic book fan,
Yeah.
and Daredevil. He's developed a particular affinity for.
Oh man. Well, Arrow is what got him started, and I think I told the story before where he was like, "How much does one of those Green Arrow comics cost? Go buy me one." The next day. I wasn't working at the shop yet.
Just one random.
Yeah. Well,
comic.
he gave me $20. He's like, "Go buy me one of those Green Arrow comics. I want to check one
Wow.
out." So I bought him Longbow Hunters, and my way to talk to my dad about things is like in baseball terms, and I was like, "This is the Mickey Mantle of Green Arrow stories, Dad. Read this," and he's
This is
become
the Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Of Green Arrow.
This
stories.
has got a murderer's row of
Yeah.
artists on it.
Michael Jordan, the greatest New York Yankee. And so he's become a big Arrow fan and a big Green Arrow fan, a big Flash fan. He's like Gotham a lot too. And I always knew, because the way he's become with street, he loves street level stuff. Is like I was like, if he could just freaking read Daredevil, like if he just reads Man Without Fear, he's gonna fall in love with this character. And he was just like, no, he's doing other stuff, reading other things, and the show premiered, and I go,
I think he watched it before either of us.
he did, which I don't know, it's mind blowing to me that happened. And I sent him a text, that Thursday night, and I was like, hey, Daredevil's premiering tomorrow, make sure to check it out. And he sends back and he goes, I watched the trailer, I'm ready. And so the next day he sends me this text. We were actually at the bar that Friday night, and he goes, Daredevil kicks Major League butt. And I was like, all right, right on. And he's like, have you seen it yet? And I was like, no. And the next day he sends me a text, have you seen it yet? And I was like, no, I haven't seen an episode yet. I'm looking forward to seeing it, though.
You're out of the will.
Yeah. And so I went over to grab dinner with them before recording today. And I had shown him taken a picture of, there were a couple Daredevil glasses we have at the shop. And he's like, oh, I want that one. Bring that one home. And I get home. And he's like, hey, here's the glass. Here you go. And I was like, do you want to catch an episode of Daredevil? I don't know what episode you're on, but I'm on episode 4. And he goes, I've seen it already, but I'll watch it again. Let's do it. And immediately cleans the glass out, pours a beer in the glass, and sits down. He's like, let's do this. Let's watch some Daredevil. And he was just like, I remember he was just so, I've never seen him this excited about a character before. He was just like, he's perfect. He's perfect. I love this. And and he had seen the episode before, so he kept turning to me before the scene would happen. And he was like, hey, this scene's brutal. And then he turns to me before the scene where he saves Rosario Dawson, and he goes, hey, I like this scene. Watch this scene. And then he goes, this is badass. And so, it is. Daredevil kicks a lot of ass. And again, it's funny because knowing what my dad likes, I know what to expect, that it's going to be this super in-your-face badass, hand-to-hand scene. And the scene ends, and he turns to me, he's like, I like that scene. That's a good scene. Like his just, I think I don't know if I talked this. His side note.
This is where Captain America really left.
Oh man, when we were watching Cap 2, which here's another thing about my dad. Doesn't go to the movies. He does not give a shit about going to the movies. The first thing he'll say is, "When does it come out on DVD?" But Cap 2, Winter Soldier, and he had heard about it. And I think there's a thing with veterans really kind of having a thing about Captain America, and he really digs Captain America. He was in the army.
He's a soldier. He's in the military. He's an
And,
active military member.
And so he, I was like, hey, just throwing it out there. I forgot what other movie I was saying maybe we should go see. I was like, oh, Amazing Spider-Man 2. And he actually really liked that movie. It kind of surprised me because I didn't think he liked the kind of big bombastic stuff. Anyway, I was like, hey, let's go see Cap 2. And he was like, all right. And we went to go see it. And he stayed awake through the whole thing and like freaking loved it. And even like, I was like, hey, there's a post-credit scene thinking you wanted to go. And he's like, we're waiting. Let's watch it. And so anyway, long story short, it's Christmas. My brother hadn't seen it yet, so I bought it for him on DVD. And we were going to have a family kind of thing and watch it. And we sit down. And my dad's like super psyched to watch it again. And for all you Captain America fans who've seen the Cap 2, the beginning when they jump in and is he wearing a parachute? He's like, nah, he wasn't. And he goes in and starts kicking ass. My dad turns to my brother and me. Granted, I've seen the movie already. I was with my dad when this happened. He turns to me and to my brother and he goes, hey Mick, this is when Cap really lets loose. And like he was so like jazzed. And my mom and I guess my future sister-in-law. We're talking, and my dad was almost like a dog. He's like almost growling, like, hey, because they were like talking over the dialogue. He's like, stop it. And he, wouldn't fall asleep and was just this watchable protector of this movie. And real quick, one other quick thing about him, in The Dark Knight, the scene where he goes to, is it Shanghai or Tokyo or where's
Hong Kong?
Hong Kong, thank you. And he goes in with the the old CIA kind of thing, the Skyhook program, and he busts in and grabs the guy. And right before the scene starts, he turns to me and he's like, this is the best scene in any Batman movie. He's like, because you can't stop Batman. He's everywhere. And I was like, yeah, right on. He was just like, this is a good scene. This is a good scene. And so I can't wait to watch more Daredevil. And when I left the house, I was like, so you going to watch another episode of Daredevil? And he already had it started playing. He's like, maybe. The fact that he's and I knew it. I freaking knew it. I was like, all he has to do is see Daredevil in action, and I thank you, Marvel and Netflix, for doing it, because I knew as long as they did it right, and I had no doubt that they would, you would get this old, retired military guy is now the biggest Daredevil cheerleader in the world, and it's really cool seeing him become such like a huge fan of this guy. He's like, hey Marge, like my mom, this guy Daredevil. My mom was so disgusted by the show. She can't stand any blood. She's like, how do you watch this? And she was like, it was the scene where Kingpin's crushing a guy's head. She's like, I'm gonna be sick. You're making me sick, Greg, that you would watch this show. And he was like, this is a good scene. This is a good scene.
These characters have something to say.
Yeah. Oh, that's the thing too. I had him watch there's a great documentary. Here's a reason to go out and buy the Daredevil movie. Disc 2. Buy the double disc.
Yes.
Buy disc 2.
Is it on the director's cut?
I think it is, yeah. Disc 2 has The Men Without Fear, which is this fantastic documentary about all the men who worked on Daredevil. Up
to that point, which I think was up to Bendis.
Yeah, because Brubaker I don't think was around yet. Certainly not Mark Waid.
He takes hold right before Civil War.
Mm-hmm. Because his thing was still they say how long they've written him, and it's his start date to present for Bendis.
Bendis, yeah.
And so before we sat down and watched episode 4 of Daredevil, I was like, hey, because my dad, I think, has taken a liking to Frank Miller. I think he likes his style of writing.
Right.
He likes the very kind of gritty, in your face.
This world is hell.
Yeah. The Dark Knight Returns. He was a fan of.
Goddamn Batman.
Yeah. And he straight up bought me freaking for my birthday first editions of the Dark Knight Returns, the issues, which was insane.
That's on my list.
Yeah, and
I'm looking forward to Awesome Con of New York Comic Con.
Oh yeah,
I'm like Oscar Schindler. I make lists.
And back to
his lists are better. He actually saves people's lives.
This is true.
I just buy comic books.
This is true. This is true.
But they're both on lists.
Yes.
And that was the comparison.
If I will say, for anyone who are like, what the fuck, Sam? That's me quoting Liam Neeson from the HBO series Life's Too Short.
That's right. That's a great scene.
Because he comes in to pitch something to Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant, and they see him with a list, and they're like, oh, you noticed this list?
Yeah.
When Steven Spielberg approached me to play Oscar Schindler, I was like, Steven, I make lists. And he was like, that's half the job. So that's me referencing that.
Yeah, check the scene on YouTube.
If only this were in front of a live audience, because right as you were saying I'm like Schindler. I make lists. I just go like
Everyone's like,
I'm
oh,
sitting back and I'm just like, okay, Sam's about to say something silly, and then like you invoke Schindler
as I do. Yeah.
You invoke Schindler, and I just get this "what the fuck" face. Like I'm one of the last people to like freak out at like weird references like that. But I was like, "But Sam,
Well, there's no anti-Semitism.
no, I'm not saying."
He
And he
made
did
this.
save Jews. He saved.
He saved
Yes.
him. It wasn't like The Devil's Arithmetic or Sophie's Choice or any of those other films that you just get so depressed watching.
Yeah.
But they're
It's-
important because they show you that never again.
It's
Never
so
again.
weird.
Never again.
Speaking of, terrible. Well, not terrible. Terrible.
Atrocities.
Analogies. Yeah. Well, analogies.
Okay.
When people say things like, "This is my Sophie's Choice" or whatever, it's like, no, it's not. Not even. Do you know what that movie's about?
Sophie's Choice is she has to choose which one of her children dies in a concentration camp. You don't want to make Sophie's Choice.
Yeah.
Nothing is Sophie's Choice for you, hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, unless it is Sophie's Choice, but for the most part, the way that most people use it.
In which case, we're sorry.
Yeah,
But
that
the-
sucks.
yeah.
I apologize.
So you're
So
fucking
the Daredevil director's cut on DVD
Speaking of Sophie's Choice,
has a great documentary. Yeah, if you're gonna buy the theatrical cut or the director's cut,
your Sophie's Choice between which
And,
version of the movie to watch.
you buy the director's cut because it comes with this great documentary, Man Without Fear, and
Also, it's just a better cut of the movie.
it is. Get a little more
It's got Coolio.
courtroom stuff. Yeah,
And it does not have that awkward like rooftop sex scene or whatever the hell it is.
Well, he
I never
sees
saw
her in
the
he
theatrical
sees her
version,
in
so
the
I
rain, and then
yeah.
they bang for hours.
Mhm.
But yeah,
and there's a 10-minute thing. This is on YouTube. You should check it out as well. After the life's too short, Liam Neeson thing, Frank Miller talking about Daredevil, and Frank Miller talking about Daredevil is like a great historian talking about a painting, or a great film critic talking about a movie they loved, and because Frank Miller totally understands Daredevil 100%, and it makes sense why this guy was so great at writing Daredevil. And so I haven't watched it, and I just see he's kind of like interested in watching it, whatever. And the 10-minute clip ends, and he turns to my mom, and he's like, people got to see this. He's like, I think a lot of people just think people who write comics are like college dropouts and are just doing it for a paycheck. These guys have something to say, Yeah, and they do. I mean, and I'm glad that he's learning these things. He's slowly learning these things, because years ago I don't think he'd probably give a crap about all that stuff, but he's taking it. That's happening to a lot of people. They're really becoming fans of things.
Yeah.
And it's clearly, people are coming in asking to buy Rocket Raccoon
people are gonna,
stuff because Guardians, or Daredevil because of the TV show.
the Rage of Ultron graphic novel.
Oh
I'm sure is
man,
gonna
that
sell.
sold like crazy. We sold out the first day,
Like hotcakes.
like hotcakes.
Mm.
Stop, like hotcakes.
Hand over fist.
Yeah.
What's this? Well, it looks like this one's going to be a short episode this week, guys, because one of our hardy band is going to be in California, so we're just going to do a double-long conversation and then be back with, the Phantom of the Opera and fucking candy bars and maybe even some of Eureka's Castle, the fuck, but, we'll talk about comics and it'll be awesome. So don't miss it next week. We'll be back. Until then, just enjoy your fucking day.